Welcome to the Humanities Team podcast with me, Steve Farrell. Humanities Team is an international spiritual movement whose purpose is to communicate and demonstrate the timeless truth that we are all one, with the divine and all life, caring for each other and the world we share, so that people's actions reflect this profound understanding within our generation. We believe that living this truth is essential to resolving the most chronic and acute world challenges and vital to creating a flourishing world of peace, harmony, and happiness. We offer transformative education programs in personal and spiritual development, and we host an annual event called Global Oneness Day. Similar to Earth Day, which galvanized the global environmental movement, Global Oneness Day has become a catalyst for spiritual activism and an integral part of the present-day global oneness movement, which represents a profound new paradigm in human culture. Humanities Team is the only global nonprofit organization working in transformational education. Since we are a nonprofit, there is no focus on growing profits or satisfying shareholders, and 100% of all revenue goes toward our work supporting conscious evolution, planetary awakening, and flourishing at every level of life. If you'd like to learn more about us or want to support our mission directly through donation or volunteering some of your time, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org. And lastly, if you enjoyed this podcast, we'd be grateful if you'd leave us a review.
I'd now like to introduce our special guest. Mark Nepo moved and inspired readers and seekers around the world with his #1 New York Times bestseller, The Book of Awakening, and his most recent book, Inside the Miracle. Beloved as a poet, teacher, and storyteller, Mark has been called one of the finest spiritual guides of our time, a consummate storyteller, and an eloquent spiritual teacher. He has published 16 books and recorded 11 audio projects, including 7,000 Ways to Listen, which won the 2012 Books for a Better Life Award. His work has been translated into more than 20 languages. Mark has appeared several times with Oprah on her Super Soul Sunday program on OWN TV, and has also been interviewed by Robin Roberts on Good Morning America. He lives in Michigan. You can follow his work at marknepo.com. Welcome to the Living in Oneness Summit, Mark. It's great to have you with us.
Well, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be a part of your good work.
Well, super. We've all been looking forward to this program with you. This is the first time we've had an opportunity to do a program together, and gosh, we have a lot of ground to cover, so I think I'll just jump right in.
Sure.
And Mark, I've had a chance to read a lot of your material, and I find your life story so inspiring for people that aren't familiar with your life story. Can you just share a little about some of these huge health challenges that you encountered with cancer earlier in your life?
Yeah, sure. So, and this new book, Inside the Miracle, it gathers almost 30 years of my inquiry and learning into suffering and healing and wholeness. And, I'm 64, and 28 years ago, in my 30s, I entered a period where I had a rare form of lymphoma. And there was a very 3-year intense period where I had a tumor that was growing in my skull bone that grew to be the size of a grapefruit. And I was very close to having a craniotomy, which would have affected my speech and my memory, which for, what I do is like knees to a quarterback. And after a gauntlet of tests and biopsies, that tumor vanished. It was a miracle. And I was cast like Jonah out of the mouth of the whale back into life. And really, there was no normal to return to. And that was so dramatic that neither I nor the doctors had seen that at the same time there was a very tiny sister tumor that was growing on a rib in my back. And within 10 months, I was back in the hospital. And that's when I was really in real despair, because I felt and we can talk more about the lessons from all this, but I felt like, did I waste a miracle? Did I not honor it? Did I do something here to be back in this place? And, you know, and then I had to have that rib and the adjacent muscles surgically removed, and I learned that the surgeon was part of the miracle. And then because it was a rare form of lymphoma and no one was sure what was going on, within weeks after having that rib removed, I was a candidate for very aggressive chemotherapy, which I had for 4 months until the chemo almost killed me, and I had to stop that. So I learned that miracle is a process and not an event, and that everything, even the damn chemo, was part of the miracle. And really, you know, and I want to say as we talk about this, that everyone who is alive will have the opportunity to be dropped into the depths of life. And for me, it happened to be cancer, but it doesn't have to be catastrophic or life-threatening. You know, it could be surprise or wonder or beauty or the sudden appearance of love or being seen or the loss of a dream or the loss of a job, you know, or being sent without purpose into the world. So I want to make sure as we talk about this that for me, you know, not to deify the catastrophe, cancer is a disease, but whatever is opened in us is always more important than what opens us. And that's where the deeper spiritual journey begins, in our relationship as a part to this unbelievable whole, W-H-O-L-E, as you were talking and as you were sharing in the beginning, this oneness that we're all a part of, and being dropped into the depths of life is what challenges us to hold everything back and be fully present. So I'll stop there as we start.
Yeah, well, what a fascinating conversation. I'm here with Mark Nepo. We're talking about his life, but he just released a book from Sounds True called Inside the Miracle, and I want to highly recommend this book. I have read it, or much of it myself, and it shares this whole personal account of what happened here in Mark's life. It is unbelievable what in his mid-30s, this cancer that occurred twice, and your wife at the time was also, she had cancer at the same time also, Mark?
Yes, my former wife, and she actually had cervical cancer, and so we literally in picking her up at one hospital in Albany, New York, once after she had a hysterectomy and was able to come home, we literally dropped me off at the other hospital, and as I began my journey. And I think one of the things that, you know, having been both a patient and a partner, it's very important to share a deep learning there, is that the pain of being a patient and a partner is very different. And you know, also all the things that we go through when they're made in deep relief when we're faced with something life-threatening, but they really speak to what everyone goes through in ordinary life. The journey is the same. It's just we can see these things more clearly when all of a sudden we're thrown into it. So one of the things that we go through this every day with the people we love, but when we're going through something, when I'm the patient, or when I'm going through whether it's emotional, physical, or spiritual pain, you know, that's a different place. The experience is lower in our heart. It's like, I know what this pain is, and I hope that it doesn't last, and I can't wait for it to be over. And terror is locking on to, oh my God, what if I'm in this pain, whatever it is, forever? Now, of course, and this is one of the great lessons from the Buddhist tradition about the notion of impermanence. You know, we often think of that as, well, that means we're all going to die, and we will. No one lives forever. But the gift of impermanence is that within living this life, nothing will stay the same. So whatever fear, pain, despair, or worry that we're in, it will not stay the same. Now being a partner, I have found that the pain and the worry is higher up, kind of like around where your throat is. Because when we love someone, whatever they're feeling that's difficult, because we love them, we make it worse in our mind and our heart because we love them. And we're basically powerless. I mean, if we're together and you fall down, I can help you up. Or if you're thirsty, I can bring you water. But the deeper kind of pain, the pain of the journey, the growing pains of the journey, of how we move from being a singular flight to being part of this oneness, we can't do anything to take that away from each other. And that's where compassion comes in, because compassion literally means to keep honest company with. So all we can do is be present with each other. And this leads us to one of the great paradoxes about being human, and that is that no one can live your life for you. No one can feel what you need to feel or discover what you need to discover. And no one can make it alone. I think that this oneness, whatever name you give to it, whatever is larger than us individually, I think the design of life has been made just hard enough that we need each other to ensure the journey of love.
Beautiful. Well, and of course, a lot of people talk about this, Mark, but wow, to live this as you did, in one's mid-30s, to have cancer strike twice, once between the brain and the skull, and then a second time in one of your ribs, and then to have your wife, also going through a cancer situation, your then wife. It's just it's mind-boggling. I'm guessing we have here listening and others that will listen in to the replay, many people with health challenges and of course also many people that just are feeling the adversity of this time that we live in, where just weeks after the Paris bombing, there's so much, so many are unsettled, and I love your story where you talk about not denying any aspect of our human drama, not trying to push it away or the fear away, but instead living in it and finding a path to healing. It's amazing how, and I'm sure this isn't a short response, and but how do you, just for starters, how do you recommend people do this for those listening in that have these huge health challenges or adversity?
And first off, my story is an example and not an instruction, and we all have the resources. We are all the same distance from this oneness, from the gifts, from the resources, the resilience of life, and what works for one person may not work for the other. So I can share, my understanding from being blessed to still be here, and then each of us, everyone who's listening is going through something difficult. Then if something speaks to you, the challenge is to find where it lives in your life. How does that show up for you? So, one of the things that I have learned, and I talk about this a lot, is that it's our humanity. It's our our heart is the strongest muscle we have. And while I have experienced in my life times when my heart has been shattered, when the map of whatever I think I'm working toward has been torn up, and I can't see how is this going to unfold. Will I ever be put back together again? And yet, I can tell you now, in my 60s, that the constellation of times that I have been shattered, not only has my heart been put back together, but it has come together. It's larger, stronger, gentler, and more loving for it. And how that happens is a mystery, but I believe it involves us holding nothing back, being present, fully present to work with what we're given, because it's through that process, no matter how difficult what we're given, that we are made whole, that we are made to participate in the oneness. It's amazing. There was Oscar Wilde, the great Oscar Wilde. He had a small little prose poem that he wrote in 1894 that I just want to, because the image of it is very profound. And it's about an artist who was a sculptor who was he wakes up one day and he wants to fashion a bronze sculpture of the moment, the peace that abides in every moment. The only problem is there's no more bronze left in the world, except he remembers there is one bronze statue that he himself built when a very close friend of his died, and he built it to honor him at his grave. So he goes and he visits the grave, and he rekindles his grief, and he remembers his dear friend, and he sees this statue that he built that represents the sorrow that endures forever. And then after he feels all of that, he doesn't deny all of that grief, and he leans into it, he takes the sorrow that endures forever and he brings it back, and he melts the sorrow that endures forever down, and out of the sorrow that endures forever, he fashions the peace that abides in every moment. It's not that we run from, oh, you're sad, let's cheer up. Let's turn from this. This is the transformation, and the power of this is that we are the bronze. Everyone who lives through life, everyone will, because we love, we will experience sorrow. And the challenge is by being who we are, not hiding who we are, by not holding back, but by loving and giving what we have to give, that we actually melt the sorrow we've been given, and out of that, we create the peace that abides in every moment. And because it's transformed, it's unbreakable. It's unbreakable. Now, how do we do that? Oh, my God, I'm still trying to figure that out. And it's different for each person. But we are all on this journey. Every human being is on this transformative journey where we get challenged to transform. First, we get challenged to love and hold nothing back. And then we're challenged, how do we hold the loss that will come when we lose something we love? And then how do we transform it into the peace that abides in every moment? Wow. Nobody talked to me in school about this.
Oh, gosh, beautiful. Well, and oneness is just so much comes into play, doesn't it? Because, when I was growing up, and with the Western conception of just what life when being able to take vacations and earning more income and all of these kinds of things, but then realizing as I was growing up that really wasn't the purpose of life at all, that we are one with the divine, each other, and that we're here really to express who we are in the embodied form, which is love, and that oftentimes our life is kind of like a spiritual gym where we're just really doing weightlifting, which means that things are tough, things are challenging. There's adversity, but rarely is somebody given the kind of I'll call a PhD type program that you were given, Mark. Where people like to say where God doesn't give us more than we can handle, and I think many would say, well, that's probably more than I could handle, and it's just so encouraging. These conclusions that you come to that. We, as you said, your heart was put back together. You were larger, stronger, gentler, and more loving. I mean, it's beautiful, and that is the whole purpose in when we're given these really massive challenges, isn't it? It's to grow.
Well, and we're all challenged. Every one of us, every life, we're challenged. We live in the world. We're challenged to survive and thrive, and to develop skills. And what often happens is we get hurt or we're afraid, and now we make survival God. And that, surviving and thriving are aspects of living. They're life skills. They're not to be deified. And so we have to live in the world. So the mind is a great tool, and the mind helps us make decisions and sort and prioritize and choose and problem solve. But I've learned through my life that the things that matter, in order to thrive, my heart is asked to not sort and choose and prioritize, but to take everything in, to let it, to absorb and integrate, to hold my heart open, because then a deeper logic of spirit is released that connects me to oneness. And now, with that connection, it's easier to survive. It doesn't eliminate the difficulties, but it right-sizes the difficulties. So, let me share a couple of things that were very profound learnings on the other side of my journey that has shaped all my work all these years. And, one is that I woke up on the other side of all this, and through no wisdom on my part, I'd like to say I made wise choices. I was like that bronze. I was melted in the furnace of this experience. And when I awoke on the other side, I was living from my heart and not my head. Before this, I was a driven artist. And even though I spoke about the heart, I was really much more in my head. And I just woke up, and like snow melting into the ground in March, the essence of me had melted into the heart of me. And ever since, my mind has served my heart and not the other way around. And the other really amazing gift has been that, I'm Jewish, I was raised Jewish, but I am a student of all paths. And this happened because I was blessed during all this to have people from all traditions offer me some kind of help or kindness or blessing. And when I say all traditions, I mean like even, open it way up to like scientists and even atheists. An atheist believes in nothing instead of everything. They still believe in something. So that's even a tradition. And I had a friend who was an atheist who just sat with me in silence when there was nothing else to say and held my hand. So to be on the other side of this, I wasn't, and I'm still not after all these years, wise enough to know what worked and what didn't. And so I feel like life and God challenged me to believe in everything. And so ever since then, I have been a student of all paths, and all my work, all my teaching, when I'm with other people journeying, I try to reveal what I feel is that oneness, that common center at the heart of all paths, and try to express or delineate the unique gifts of each path, and try to then look for practical ways that we can apply these gifts to our everyday challenges.
Beautiful. Boy, you can just see how, I'm going to use the word God or the divine, or obviously Jesus, Allah, whatever word we like, and universe. There's so many words that we may choose, but it's just, I can just see why the divine placed you here in this life so that you could endure this experience and then be this, as I shared in my introduction of you, be this spiritual guide that can talk from the vantage point of all of the paths that are journeying here back to oneness. It's just incredible. I want to talk about oneness a little bit, or we can use the word, I'll just use the word divine. And again, pardon me, listeners, if everybody favors a word that really expresses what oneness is for them. I'll use the word the divine. But I'd love to just hear about your personal relationship and how that unfolded, and start with this amazing thing that you share in your book, where we've been talking with Mark Nepo about his book, Inside the Miracle. It's recently published by Sounds True, an amazing book, definitely one for the library. And in the book, one of the things, Mark, you shared is that your wife, who, as we just discussed, also had cancer. You said that she cried out, "Where is God?" And you responded. Can you just share what you said, and then how things unfolded for you?
Well, this was maybe one of the most difficult and most divine moments I've had in my life, and it was my first chemo treatment, which was as I mentioned, was a few weeks after I had a rib removed in my back, so I was very sore. And I was in New York City, and I had the chemo treatment, and it was botched. It was horribly botched, and I was with my former wife and a dear old friend of mine, the three of us in a Holiday Inn room just outside of Manhattan, and not prepared that I would get sick and vomit, and the only medicine I was given was oral, so I couldn't keep it down. And so I did, proceed to get sick like every 30 or 40 minutes, and each time it was like, well, this can't keep going on. But then, eventually, it really, as we got into the night, we did have to go to the emergency room because it didn't stop. And so before we went to the emergency room, about 4 or 5 in the morning, after I had been, now coughing up blood, I was on the floor with my elbows on my knees and my head in my hands, and my former wife, in her frustration and in pain, just cried out with tears, "Where is God? Where is God?" And I don't know where it came from in me, but exhausted on the floor, I looked at her and I said, "Here, right here." And I think that, a lot of my work for all these years has been trying to understand what came to me in that moment. And I think some of the lessons, and certainly not in that moment, I had a sense of something was moving through me, but I didn't understand what that meant even as I said it. But as I moved away from that difficult morning, first thing I started to understand was that to be broken, there's no reason to see all things as broken. That, yes, I was broken. I was in pain. I was afraid. I didn't know if I was going to make it out of that room. And at the same time, I also had this glimpse that the sun was coming up. And down this road from wherever we were in this Holiday Inn, a baby was being born. And somewhere else, a couple were making love. And someone was helping someone. And so life, all of it was still happening. And it didn't, and this is what I mean about not choosing. Often in our pain, when I'm broken, I want to see the whole world as broken. But while that's understandable, it's not accurate, and nor is it helpful. Because while I need the company of those who understand what it is to feel broken, I need the solidarity of everything that's not broken to feel. So I needed to let into my heart that this was one of the most awful moments of my life, and at the same time, the miracle of life was still going on. All of it was true. All things are true. All things are not fair. All things are not just, but all things contain truth. And so part of being in the moment and not holding anything back and being present is to be present beyond what we're feeling. Not to, often what we'll do is in a situation like that then say, oh, well, the miracle of life is happening, so what's my puny little insignificant trouble? Well, that's not true either. That's not helpful either. Because it's not about minimizing what we're going through, and it's not about, running away from it. It's about facing what we're given to work with, honoring the truth of what's difficult, and everything else that's still happening. And I want to give you another story that speaks about what I'm learning about resilience and oneness. So, a few years ago, I lost my father at the age of 93, and the last year of his life was a slow avalanche to his death. He was in and out of hospitals and rehabilitation centers. And I was with him once, and he could no longer speak at this point. And as many people who are probably listening have experienced, I was in a situation where all of a sudden I'm a child who's feeding his father. And I was feeding him applesauce in his hospital bed. And out of my love for him, I just was so present. I was so everything Just as everything when I was in that Holiday Inn was in that moment of feeling terrified, now in this moment, all these years later, everything was in the moment I wanted to put that spoon of applesauce in his mouth so carefully that it didn't disturb his breathing and that the spoon would slip right along his lip. And I got into this rhythm where we were doing it. And in this heartbreaking, bittersweet moment of feeding him applesauce, this almost 93-year-old man who was my father, who could no longer speak, I had gotten so into this moment with him that suddenly I started to feel that I was in the moment of every child who ever fed a dying parent. And where my experience touched into the experience of everyone who's ever done that, who's ever lived, that moment I wasn't alone. I had a heartfelt experience of the oneness of that across time. And I believe, I'm learning from that experience, that where the fully inhabited moment for each of us touches at the bottom of our heart, it touches into the moment of everyone else who's shared such a moment. That's where resilience lives. Because it was me with my father, and it wasn't just me with my father. Because I had entered it so fully, I was now in the moment, the oneness of it, where everyone who had ever fed applesauce or juice or whatever to their parents, I felt that. I was in that rhythm.
Oh, my God. That just sounds so amazing. And what a blessing, wow, to have this moment with your dad and as you share, that it was so much bigger. It was than even just you two really feeling the divine's hand, feeling that the presence of all of the cosmos or earth.
Well, and I feel that, the divineness, we don't need to go big to touch the oneness. We need to go small. We need to inhabit, because that oneness we're talking about, that divine, and again, if we're using God or oneness or divine, and that doesn't speak to you if you're listening, find your own spiritual synonym. It doesn't matter what we call it. You can call it quantum physics. You can call it Atman, Dharma, Buddhahood, Allah, Moses, Jesus. It doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is comparing honest notes about how we relate to everything larger than us. If you believe there's anything larger than you, then you're a mystic. That's just as simple as that. And as soon as we try to name what's larger than us, then everybody goes to their spiritual quarter. Well, I don't really care anymore what we call it. I want to understand how you relate to it so that I can better relate to it and that we can share that and understand that. So I'm discovering, and this has been in all the traditions, and, William Blake, the great mystic poet, said that eternity is famous. We know this. Eternity is in a grain of sand. And that's what he's saying, it's through living the particular moment that's before you to its fullest that the door of oneness opens. It's in everything. It's in everything.
But by the way, let me invite again listeners, because I just want to make sure we create the opportunity. We've got a lot of people listening. If you're on Instant Teleseminar, you can put questions or comments in the question window. If you're on the phone, you can, I think, depress one or two, and that puts your hand up. I want to just make sure that people can come in. People are quieter than normal on this particular call. I think it's because they're just like me, Mark. They're just captivated by this experience that you're sharing. I'd love to just go deeper into oneness, because even here you were sharing, well, we don't need to go bigger. We can go smaller. Just what that hand of the divine or connection with the divine feels like, and how that's changed over the years. I love that you're bringing in that it's often bringing you more to the question than to the answer, because that is true for me also, as just coming into a feeling of something that's really beautiful, not necessarily the answers to all of what might be in front of us.
This is very important to me, in what and this probably comes out of my Jewish tradition, heritage as well, and that is the life of questions. That questions, we have been miseducated to think that we ask questions for answers. I find that we think about the things that really matter in life. I mean, yes, if I ask you a question, how many quarters make a dollar? Well, that's those are factual questions. But the kind of questions we're talking about that bring us deeper into being alive, they don't have any answers. And so questions, actually, I invite us to ask questions the way you would open a door that you would want to go through with someone. There's a line in the Talmud that says, "Why ruin a perfectly good question with an answer?" And I think at the heart of that is that questions are actually like lanterns we swing in the dark, by which we see a little bit further how we're going. And in that way, a friend is a lantern. When I'm in pain or when I'm afraid, I need my friend to open doorways to questions, to be present with their love, and that's a lantern that opens up for me to see when I can't see. Because we all take turns. I really believe that those of us who are awake are the students, and those of us who stay awake are the teachers. And how we take turns, how we take turns. It doesn't matter how much we know. I'm clear today with you on our call, and I may get off the phone and trip as I bring the garbage out tonight and forget half of what we talked about and need to relearn it again tomorrow, because that's the messy, magnificent journey of being human. There is nowhere to go but here. And everything, and this is what I love, in the Hindu tradition, and maybe you've heard, and many people have heard of the deity Ganesh, or Ganesha, who is often portrayed as an elephant. And Ganesh is, in the Hindu tradition, the provider and remover of obstacles. Now, in the Judeo-Christian traditions, we have saints and sages we pray to get us out of trouble. But in the Hindu tradition, what I love about this, and I actually, without realizing it, I have for the last 15, 20 years collected Ganeshas wherever I go. But in that tradition, that Ganesh is the provider and remover of obstacles, tells us that obstacles are teachers. Nobody signs up for them. Nobody likes them. We don't want them. But they are teachers that are put in our path so that we can recover direct living and experience oneness, not just grasp it. And when I was younger and, in my 30s and beginning to teach and getting my doctorate and all those things, I always thought, because I was taught, that understanding truth would lead to wisdom. And I think that's true. But I learned by living that experiencing truth leads to joy. Now, I'd love to have both, wisdom and joy. But as I get older, if I have to choose, I'll pick joy. Because joy is experiencing the sensation of oneness. So when I can, as we talk throughout this hour, when I can hold nothing back, when I can work with what I'm given, when I can be fully present, and no one can do this all the time, we're human. Especially when fear and pain and worry make us tense and pull away, our job is then after that to lean back in. And when I can lean back in and and offer to inhabit all of my humanness, that is often the admission ticket to experiencing oneness. It's being authentic. So when I'm authentic, not only do I know who I am, not only might it make for integral relationships, but when I'm authentic, I get to experience oneness. And this is why, if you look at the word kindness and kinship, they have the same root. Because being kind gives us access to the kinship that's among all living things.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Absolutely. Gosh, I want to make sure we've got somebody with their hand up, so I want to bring that person in. There's also a question that's come in. Let's go to, and this is just, it's super profound. I love, Mark, what you share and really resonate with these truths that you share, just really standing in our authenticity and never pushing things away, really being present in what is happening, and also present with the oneness, with the divine. It's beautiful. Penny Heipel and Nanette Kennedy D. Meyer are here with me. And Penny, can you bring the person in that had their hand up if their hand is still up on the call?
Sure. Yes. It's Ortega from area code 619. You have the mic now.
Hello?
Hello,
Yes.
Ortega. We can hear you.
Oh,
Hi.
my goodness. Hi, my name is Cecilia, actually.
Well, nice to have you here.
Hi.
Cecilia.
Hi.
Do you have a question for Mark or a comment you wanted to make?
Well, yeah, I just raised my hand after he spoke about, the idea that you could take out the trash and trip and then just forget everything and, have to relearn it or, just let be gone. And that reminds me of something I always used to wrestle with, which was that at some point I was going to graduate. And it's like, I've come to realize, no, not really. And I was wondering if he could speak to that.
Yes, and I think, that there is no, I don't believe personally, at least this is my, and we're all guessing, nobody knows, we're all comparing notes at what it is to be alive. But from my experience, I don't believe in an arrived at state of enlightenment. I believe that being human, when I was young, like a lot of, romantic young, poets, I wanted to transcend out of here. Well, the only place you can transcend to is here. Heaven is here on earth. And so I believe that we trip in and out of, one day we're clear, the next day we're cloudy. One day I'm so attuned and sensitive that if we're having tea, those days when, like, if you spill your tea, I can catch the cup before it reaches the floor. And tomorrow I'll spill the tea on you, and that's because, and so, I can be awake and then I can be asleep and I can be incredibly sensitive and then numb. And all of this, just because there are clouds and we have different atmospheres of weather, the sun never stops shining. The sun never stops shining even though there are times we can't see. And likewise, the oneness never stops emanating. The resilience never stops showing itself. And we are the ones that come in and out of clearly seeing it. And so this is what I feel is the proper functioning definition of faith, not faith in an idea or a religious code or a principle, but faith that while there's a cloud over me today, it doesn't mean the sun is gone. So while there's an emotional or psychological cloud over me today, it doesn't mean the light of oneness that comes through my heart is gone. It means it's out of reach for today. And maybe tomorrow it'll be back in reach. And so, we never graduate. And it's humbling that it doesn't matter how much we learn, or how much over the years, no one is exempt from this amazing journey of being human. And I'll just with this, the comment is that, so everything we're talking about, if a famous film director described this as a role for you or me as an actor, we would think it was the role of a lifetime. And it is. And each of us gets to live into it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I find that to be the wonderful humility of being human. I've come to that realization myself.
That's beautiful. Beautiful how you phrase that. Yes.
Am I pronouncing your name right, Cecilia?
Cecilia, yes.
Cecilia, yeah. Thank you for so much for joining us. Yeah, it makes it makes enlightenment accessible, and it's my experience too. Gosh, who do we know that walks on water, so to speak? Though I guess when water is frozen, we can walk on water, but when it's not frozen, it's hard to walk on water. But yeah, just being, I guess, not pretending, which is what authenticity is, and it's just really being in our truthful self, being our truthful self, and expressing love as we can, in the ways that we can.
Authentic, the word authentic comes from the Greek, which means mark of the hand. So it speaks to that when we are embodied, then, what's in our heart comes out in our hand. It comes out in what we touch and what we do and how we hold and how we care. So that's beautiful.
Yes, it is. There's a couple other questions here, and I want to make sure, and apologies to people that where we're not getting to your question here. We've got a good listening audience today. Dolly in Lemaire says, I can't seem to find peace. I always feel anxiety in my solar plexus. Help. I suspect that Dolly speaks for a lot of people, especially at this time where the world is a bit unsettled.
Well, there's a lot there. And first off, my compassion and and I understand, and it's terrible to feel anxiety and agitation, and it's terrible to have that in us. And I'm not exempt from it. I feel agitation and fear and anxiety. I think one of the things that each of us has to discover. And so I appreciate, and it's a courage to offer that statement and to ask for help. I think we all have to do that. And what happens for me is that, when at first I feel anxious, I am in the anxiety. And when I can settle down or at least touch into other life, which I mentioned earlier, is trying to break the circumference of my anxiety and be in touch, let anything in, light, trees, music, anything, get out of the house, so that it, not as a distraction, but to let more things in to right-size the anxiety. Then the anxiety is in me rather than me in the anxiety. And the same thing with fear. Fear, pain, and worry present themselves as all-encompassing. That's how they say hello. You stub your toe, like when you think you might have broken it, like you're on a hike and you hit a stone, a boulder, and in that moment, the entire world is the pain that's shooting through your whole body. But it has fluctuation, and after a while, it's throbbing, but it's no longer all-encompassing. Now, you're not in the pain is in you, and now you start to see, the day is still here, the wind is still blowing through these beautiful trees, the light is still coming, and I still have a toe that hurts. And we're challenged to let it all in so that it can create a balanced sense of wholeness. So, it's difficult. Let me say a word about the anxiety of our time. And this is, I just had a very dear friend and mentor pass away a few weeks ago. He was 102. His name was Joel Elke, and he was a groundbreaking physician and a painter and a child of the Holocaust. And because of his lens as a doctor, he spoke about in every age, and it's in our age too, of the if you look at all of humanity as a body, as a global body, then, in every body there are toxic cells and there are healthy cells. And, so we have toxic cells in the global body. And everything matters. So in the same medical model, in the same way, like take my cancer, so there are 3 basic ways to treat cancer. If it's drastic enough, you have to do surgery. If it's treatable, then you have to do treatment to remove the toxicity. And, the third long range is prevention. So this translates in the global body as education is prevention and love and caring and compassion. And treatment is, treatment is what we're doing right here. So there is, surgery is, what's going on in the world right now with all the major countries trying to figure out how to treat this cancer in the global body. What do we have to do and what can we do? But every conversation like we're having today with all of you who are listening, that is strengthening the immune cells in the global body. This is not just idle talk. Every time, and this is where in the Christian tradition, where 2 or more of us are gathered, well, this is spoken differently in all traditions. But every time we are authentic and we are loving and we come together like this, we strengthen the immune system in the global body, and it does make a difference. And as with cancer in an individual body, we have to be active on all levels of treatment, from education, compassion, strengthening. So when we are strengthening our individual self, it's not just navel gazing. It's participating in the global body. It's making the global body healthy. And sometimes, as now, as in World War II, as in other times in history, sometimes surgery is necessary. And it's very difficult. And so how no one can remove, I talk about this in the book. There's an essay called The Terrible Knowledge, and this is terrible knowledge, that life is both fragile and resilient. It is both miraculous and dangerous. And every second is unrepeatable. And therefore, we have to live an entire life in every moment.
Well, and we are just about out of time here, Mark. I knew this hour would go fast. It's just these themes that you're bringing around, both at the personal level, where you talked about fear and worry, and how, to leave your home is one example, so that the fear isn't in you, the fear, or you're not in the fear, you just are, the fear is in you, and then you can kind of release that. And then also these themes of that we talk about quite a lot in Humanities Team, where we are a cell in the body of the earth, and how we can strengthen our immune system. And it's beautiful. You've really shared so much wisdom at an individual and at a global society or collective level, and it's all incredibly practical. So let me just start with that. Thank you, Mark. MarkNepo.com is the site you can go to follow Mark, MarkNepo.com, and we've been talking about his book, Inside the Miracle. It's a beautiful book that he shares. It's a story that's still unfolding, and I highly recommend the book. It's from Sounds True, Inside the Miracle.
If you'd like to receive all of our new podcast episodes, please click on the subscribe button. To find out more about Humanities Team transformational education programs and about how you can help support our mission, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org, where you can also sign up for our email list so we can let you know about our free online events and other news about what we're up to each week. And again, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review. Thank you.